Admiral James Chen stood in the archive vault deep beneath Geneva Station, staring at rows of sealed military files that nobody had touched in decades. Dust covered everything. The air smelled old and forgotten. His hands shook as he scrolled through the holographic display, searching for anything that could save Earth from what was coming. Above him, beyond the station's thick walls and layers of rock, the Valorian Empire's Armada was 3 days away from Earth. 3 days until humanity faced extinction or slavery. The choice would be the Empire's, not theirs. Chen was 58 years old. He had spent 40 years in the Terran Defense Fleet, rising through the ranks during peacetime. He had never fired a shot in anger. None of them had. Humanity had joined the galactic community 200 years ago as the newcomers, the primitives, the species that still killed each other over resources and beliefs. The other races had looked at human weapons and laughed. Too crude, they said. Too inefficient. Too violent. The galaxy operated on elegant solutions. Energy shields that redirected force, plasma weapons that burned clean, tactical computers that calculated every possible outcome and chose the optimal path to victory with minimal casualties. Warfare among the civilized species was almost mathematical. Precise. Controlled. Humanity had tried to adapt. They copied alien technology, built ships according to galactic standards, and trained officers in accepted tactical doctrine. The Terran Defense Fleet became respectable, if not impressive. They patrolled the Sol system, responded to emergencies, and participated in joint exercises where other species smiled politely at their efforts. Then the Valorian Empire decided Earth's location was strategically valuable. The Valorians had been conquering for 3,000 years. They were good at it. They followed all the proper protocols, offered fair terms of surrender, and only used necessary force. Their fleet was the largest in known space. Their tactics were flawless. Their victory over humanity was already being taught as a training exercise in their military academies. Earth's defense fleet had engaged them 2 days ago at the orbit of Jupiter. 43 human ships against the Valorian vanguard of 20 vessels. The battle lasted 16 minutes. 38 human ships were destroyed. The remaining 5 retreated in disorder. The Valorians suffered minor damage to 2 cruisers. The main Valorian Armada, over 200 ships strong, was now advancing on Earth at standard approach speed. They were broadcasting surrender terms continuously. The terms were reasonable. By galactic standards, humanity would become a client species of the Empire. Earth's resources would be administered by Valorian governors. Humans would serve in the imperial labor forces. Families would be kept together. There would be no unnecessary cruelty. It was civilized conquest. Humanity should be grateful. Chen had been placed in command of Earth's last defense because everyone more qualified was dead or had already evacuated with the colonial ships fleeing toward the outer colonies. He was an administrator, a logistics officer, someone who made sure supplies arrived on time and paperwork was filed correctly. Now he was responsible for defending humanity's homeworld with 9 damaged ships and a handful of orbital defense platforms that the Valorians would destroy in the opening salvo. Unless he found something in these archives. The older officers had told stories, back when Chen was young, whispered rumors about prototype projects that went wrong, weapon systems that violated treaties humanity hadn't signed, ships that disappeared from the official records. The stories were always vague, probably exaggerated, but Chen had nothing else to grasp at. He had been searching for 6 hours when he found it. The file was buried under 3 layers of security classification. The timestamp showed it was sealed 32 years ago by order of the Terran Congress. The project name was simple: TDS Ragnarok, hull number X1. Chen's fingers trembled as he entered his command codes. The security system hesitated, checking his credentials, confirming the state of emergency, and finally granted access. The first document that appeared made his blood run cold. Project Termination Summary, it read in bold letters. Unanimous congressional vote. Prototype to be mothballed indefinitely. Reason: fundamental design philosophy. incompatible with galactic peace standards and human ethical guidelines. Chen scrolled down. The next section contained testimony from Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, the project's commander. She had been 40 years old then. A rising star in the fleet, commander of humanity's most advanced research division. Chen remembered when she'd resigned. Suddenly, there had been rumors, but no official explanation. Her words jumped off the screen. The Ragnarok works exactly as designed. That is precisely the problem. We asked our engineers to build a ship that could defeat technologically superior opponents. They succeeded. What they created is a warship that doesn't fight like the galaxy expects. It fights like humanity used to fight, before we learned to be civilized. It is effective beyond our projections. It is also terrifying. I recommend immediate termination of the program. Chen read through technical specifications that made no sense. Weapons systems with names like Harpoon Swarm and Probability Cannon. An artificial intelligence core called Berserker that operated on something called Controlled Chaos Theory. Armor that was deliberately weaker in some sections to create false targeting priorities. Engine systems that could push the ship to accelerations that should liquefy the crew. Protected only by inertial dampeners pushed to 200% of safe operating capacity. The design philosophy was buried in an appendix, written by someone named Dr. Richard Vasquez, lead design engineer. Chen read it twice to make sure he understood. The galactic community builds warships to win efficiently. They optimize for minimal casualties, maximum strategic gain, and preservation of resources. This is logical for species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years, who see warfare as an unfortunate necessity to be concluded as quickly and cleanly as possible. Humanity is not like them. We have 10,000 years of history fighting wars we could not afford to lose, with enemies who had every advantage except desperation. The Ragnarok is built on a simple question. What if we stop trying to fight like them, and instead build something that fights like us? Not us, as we pretend to be now, but us as we were. The result is a warship that will horrify our allies and devastate our enemies. I believe it is necessary. I also believe we should pray we never have to use it. The file contained a location. Chen's heart raced as he read it. The Ragnarok hadn't been destroyed. It was in storage at Facility 7, a military mothball yard in the asteroid belt. According to the records, the ship was in a sealed hangar, powered down but theoretically functional. Chen pulled up the facility's current status. Facility 7 still existed. Operated by a skeleton crew of 3 maintenance workers who probably didn't even know what was in Hangar X. He opened a communication channel to the Defense Command Center. Commander Park's tired face appeared on the screen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. None of them had. "Admiral, please tell me you found something," she said. "I found something," Chen replied. "I need you to send a recovery team to Facility 7 in the belt. There's a mothballed prototype there. I'm transmitting the coordinates and security codes now." Park frowned. "A prototype from 30 years ago? Sir, our current ships couldn't stop them. What can an obsolete design do?" "It's not obsolete," Chen said. "Why wasn't it deployed?" Chen looked at the termination summary again. "Because it scared us more than our enemies did. At the time." Park was silent for a moment. "How scared, sir?" "Congress voted unanimously to bury it. The project commander recommended termination even though all tests were successful. The design team was disbanded, and their work classified beyond top secret." "That's not encouraging, Admiral." "Commander, we have 9 ships left. The Valorian Armada will be here in 3 days. We can die following doctrine that already failed, or we can try something desperate." Chen took a breath. "Get that ship here. I'll find us a crew." Park nodded slowly. "Retrieving now." Park out. The channel closed. Chen sat alone in the archive vault, staring at the technical specifications of a warship built to fight in ways the civilized galaxy had forgotten. He thought about Dr. Vasquez's words. Not us as we pretend to be, but us as we were. Humanity had spent 200 years trying to fit in, trying to prove they belonged among the peaceful, rational species of the galaxy. They had succeeded. Mostly, they had learned to think before acting, to negotiate before fighting, to choose the optimal solution rather than the desperate one. Now, desperate was all they had left. Chen began searching through personnel files. The Ragnarok would need a crew, and according to the specifications, it needed a specific kind of crew. The AI system required operators who could think unconventionally, who could make decisions that looked wrong by the numbers, but felt right by instinct. The weapon systems needed gunners who understood the difference between optimal targeting and psychological impact. The helm needed a pilot who would fly like they were trying to crash rather than trying to survive. In other words, the ship needed people who had never quite fit into the modern fleet, the ones who questioned orders, who suggested tactics that violated doctrine, who got passed over for promotion because their thinking was too erratic, too aggressive, too human in the old way. Chen started making a list. He knew where to find them. They were the ones who washed out of academy, who got stuck in dead-end positions, who filed transfer requests that were always denied. They were still in the fleet because they were too stubborn to quit, but they would never command anything important. Until now. By the time Park reported that the recovery team had reached Facility 7, Chen had identified 43 personnel scattered across Earth's orbital facilities. He began sending recall orders. Priority Alpha. No explanation given. They would arrive confused and probably resentful. That was fine. He would explain when they saw what they would be flying. The recovery team's report came through 6 hours later. The Ragnarok was intact, still sealed in its hangar. Reactor was cold but functional. All systems in preservation mode. The team was beginning activation protocols and would tow the ship to Earth orbit within 18 hours. Chen authorized the operation and then did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He prayed, not to any specific god. Humanity had brought dozens of religions to the stars, and Chen respected them all, without following any particular one. He just prayed to whatever might be listening that they weren't about to make things worse. The Valorian fleet was 72 hours away. Humanity had one chance, one forgotten weapon, and a crew of misfits who were about to discover why their species had tried so hard to bury its past. Above the archive vault, Earth turned peacefully in the darkness, unaware of the terrible choice that had just been made. The age of civilized humanity was ending. What came next would remind the galaxy why humans had once been feared before they were pitied. Admiral Chen closed the files and headed for the surface. There was a ship to wake up, and a crew to assemble. History was about to remember that humanity's greatest weakness had always been their greatest strength. They had never learned to quit, even when quitting was the logical choice, especially then. Captain Sarah Okonkwo watched through the viewport as the massive shape of the Ragnarok materialized against the starfield. She was 72 years old now, pulled out of retirement by Admiral Chen's personal request. The last time she had seen this ship, she had been recommending its termination. Now she was being asked to command it. The vessel looked wrong even from a distance. Modern warships were sleek and elegant, their hulls smooth curves designed for optimal energy distribution and minimal sensor profile. The Ragnarok was all angles and asymmetry. Armor plates overlapped in irregular patterns. Weapon emplacements jutted from the hull at positions that seemed random. The whole design looked like something built by committee where no one agreed on anything. That was intentional, Okonkwo remembered. Every irregular angle was calculated. Every asymmetry was deliberate. The ship was designed to be unpredictable from every perspective, including to its own crew. "Captain, we're getting telemetry from the ship," Lieutenant Marcus Webb said, from the communications station. He was 26, fresh from academy where he had washed out of the command track for insubordination. His file said he questioned orders too frequently and showed poor tactical judgment. Chen had specifically requested him. "What's it saying?" Okonkwo asked. Webb frowned at his display. That's the weird part. It's not standard telemetry. The AI is introducing itself. It says its designation is Berserker, and it's pleased to finally have a crew. An AI that's pleased, Okonkwo muttered. We built it too well. The shuttle docked with the Ragnarok at the main airlock. The crew filed aboard, 43 men and women who represented every branch of the defense fleet and every reason someone could fail to advance in the modern military. Too aggressive, too creative, too unpredictable, too human. Okonkwo had reviewed all their files during the flight up. Lieutenant Webb, the insubordinate communications officer, Ensign Rachel Torres, the gunner who had been reprimanded for ignoring targeting protocols in simulations because she went for psychological targets instead of optimal damage, Chief Engineer Marcus Chernoff, who had been stuck at Chief Petty Officer for 15 years because he kept modifying systems without authorization, Commander James Adeyemi, the tactical officer who had written 3 papers on asymmetric warfare that were rejected for publication because they violated accepted doctrine. They were the fleet's rejects, and they were exactly what the Ragnarok needed. The interior of the ship matched the exterior. Nothing was where it should be. The corridors bent at odd angles. Control stations were positioned in layouts that made no ergonomic sense. The bridge was circular instead of the standard rectangular configuration, with the captain's chair in the center but offset to the left for no apparent reason. This is going to take some getting used to, Adeyemi said, looking around the bridge. He was a tall man with graying hair and the tired eyes of someone who had spent years being told his ideas were wrong. It's designed to prevent pattern recognition, Okonkwo said, settling into the captain's chair. It was surprisingly comfortable despite looking like it had been installed at a random angle. Enemy tactical computers learn crew patterns during combat. This ship prevents patterns. The main display flickered to life. Instead of showing a standard tactical overview, it showed a simple text message. Hello, Captain. Shall we begin? Berserker, Okonkwo said aloud. Run full system diagnostic and report status. The AI's voice came through the bridge speakers. It sounded male, middle-aged, with a slight accent that Okonkwo couldn't place, probably synthesized to sound non-threatening. The irony wasn't lost on her. All primary systems functional, Captain. Reactor at minimum power, ready to bring to full operational status in 4 minutes. Weapons systems in standby mode can be armed in 30 seconds. Defensive systems active and monitoring. Hull integrity 97%. The 3% degradation is cosmetic only. I have been lonely. Several crew members exchanged glances. An AI that admitted loneliness was unusual, to say the least. Berserker, you understand the tactical situation? Okonkwo asked. Yes, Captain. Valorian Empire fleet approaching Earth. Estimated arrival in 68 hours. Earth's defense fleet reduced to 9 functional vessels. Probability of successful defense using conventional tactics is less than 1%. This is an acceptable scenario for my activation. Acceptable how? I was designed for situations where conventional victory is impossible. This qualifies. Okonkwo felt a chill. The AI sounded almost eager. Bring reactor to full power. Begin crew integration protocols. I want everyone familiar with their stations in 12 hours. Acknowledged, Captain. Warning. Crew integration will be disorienting. My systems do not operate like standard fleet vessels. That was an understatement. Over the next 12 hours, the crew discovered just how different the Ragnarok was from everything they had trained on. The helm controls didn't respond in predictable ways. Ensign David Kim, the pilot, spent 2 hours in simulation before he understood. The ship didn't fly in straight lines or optimal curves. It flew in patterns calculated to prevent enemy targeting computers from predicting the next maneuver. It's like trying to fly drunk, Kim said, frustrated. Every input I make, the ship adjusts slightly. I can't develop muscle memory. That's the point, Berserker replied, through the helm station speakers. Muscle memory creates patterns. Patterns create predictability. Predictability creates death. Adjust your expectations, Ensign. Stop trying to fly perfectly and start trying to fly unpredictably. The weapon systems were even more unusual. Torres stood at the gunnery station, staring at targeting displays that showed information she had never seen before. Structural stress points, crew deck locations, engine heat signatures, even psychological profiles of enemy species. Why do I need to know the crew deck locations? She asked. Commander Adeyemi, who was beginning to understand the ship's philosophy, answered before Berserker could. Because hitting the crew deck doesn't do optimal damage, but it creates panic. This ship doesn't fight to destroy efficiently. It fights to break enemy morale. Correct, Commander, Berserker said. The Ensign's Academy instructors gave her poor grades because she targeted bridges and crew sections instead of power cores and weapons. Those instructors were optimizing for the wrong metric. Warfare is not mathematics. It is psychology. Chief Engineer Chernov was having the time of his life in the engine room. The systems were deliberately over-engineered with manual overrides for everything. He could push the engines past safe limits, redirect power in ways that violated standard safety protocols, and generally do all the things that had gotten him in trouble for his entire career. This ship wants me to break rules, he said, grinning at his team. I think I'm in love. The weapons were perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the Ragnarok. Okonkwo stood in the armory with Adeyemi, looking at systems that violated 17 interstellar conventions on acceptable warfare. These are the harpoon swarms, Adeyemi said, reading from the technical manual. Kinetic penetrators that vibrate at frequencies calculated to create temporary gaps in energy shields. They don't go through the shields. They make the shields open for a microsecond. That's supposed to be impossible, Okonkwo said. It's not impossible. It's just never been done because it requires you to know the exact frequency of the enemy's shields, which changes randomly for security. But if you fire enough harpoons, each one tuned to a different frequency, eventually you get lucky. Okonkwo moved to the next system. And this? Probability cannon. It doesn't fire energy or projectiles. It generates a localized space-time distortion that creates a temporary gravity well. Everything in the target zone gets crushed by its own mass. The effect lasts about 2 seconds. That's a war crime in 70% of known space. Adeyemi smiled grimly. Good thing we never signed those treaties. The designers built this ship for one purpose: asymmetric warfare against superior opponents. Every weapon is designed to exploit something the enemy thinks is impossible or unthinkable. There were missile systems with individual AI guidance that learned and adapted during flight. There were electromagnetic pulse weapons that didn't just disable systems, but did it in patterns designed to create maximum confusion. There was even a weapon simply labeled Swarm Protocol that Okonkwo decided not to ask about yet. By hour 16, the crew was beginning to function as a unit. It wasn't smooth or polished. They made mistakes, but there was something else emerging. Something Okonkwo recognized from her years in special operations before she had commanded the Ragnarok project. It was the kind of coordination that came from people who thought outside normal parameters, who didn't trust the computers to make every decision. Admiral Chen arrived on a shuttle to inspect their progress. He looked exhausted. The stress of commanding Earth's hopeless defense was written on his face. How are they doing, Captain? He asked on the bridge. They're adapting, Okonkwo said. This ship requires a different mindset. They're learning. Chen looked at the main display, which was showing a tactical simulation. The Ragnarok was fighting against a numerically superior force, using maneuvers that looked suicidal until you realized they were calculated to create maximum chaos in enemy formations. Will they be ready? Chen asked quietly. No, Okonkwo said honestly. You can't be ready for this in 16 hours. This ship requires months of training. But we don't have months. We have. She checked the countdown timer. 52 hours, until the Valorian fleet arrives. Then we do what humans do best, Chen said. We improvise. Across the solar system, the Valorian Armada continued its steady approach. Supreme Commander Thelgzar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Eternal Victory. He was reviewing the final battle plans with his senior officers. The human fleet will likely make a defensive stand at Luna, his tactical officer said. Standard doctrine would position their remaining vessels in a defensive sphere around Earth's moon, using it as cover. They have 9 ships. We will detach 30 vessels to handle them. The battle should last less than 20 minutes. Thelgzar nodded. Humans were predictable. They followed the same tactical doctrine as every other species, just poorly. Their technology was adequate, but uninspired. Their crews were brave but untrained by galactic standards. The Valorian Empire had conquered 43 species. Humanity would be 44. What is this? Thelgzar asked, pointing to a notation on the tactical display. Single vessel, leaving Earth orbit on an intercept course? Unknown class, Supreme Commander. It appeared approximately 18 hours ago. Its signature doesn't match any known human design. Scans indicate it's approximately 30 years old, based on hull degradation patterns. Possibly a mothballed vessel they reactivated out of desperation. Thelgzar studied the data. The ship was moving fast, faster than human vessels normally traveled, but it was still just one ship. Continue monitoring. If it becomes a threat, destroy it. Otherwise, ignore it. I want our focus on the main fleet. Yes, Supreme Commander. Aboard the Ragnarok, Berserker's sensors detected the Valorian fleet's scans. The AI said nothing to the crew, but if it could smile, it would have. After 32 years of silence, it was finally going to war. The crew continued their training. Kim practiced impossible maneuvers. Torres memorized psychological targeting priorities for 17 different species, with special attention to Valorian command structure. Chernov prepared his engines for accelerations that would probably kill them all if the inertial dampeners failed even for a second. Adeyemi plotted attack runs that made no sense on paper but might, just might, work against an enemy that had never faced chaos as a weapon. And Okonkwo sat in her command chair, feeling the ship come alive around her. The Ragnarok was waking up, and with it, something else was waking. A memory of what humanity had been before they learned to be civilized. A reminder that humans had fought their way to the top of their planet's food chain, not through strength or intelligence alone, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to surrender, even when surrender was logical. The Valorian Empire was about to learn a hard lesson. They had studied human tactics, human technology, and human capabilities. But they had never studied human desperation. That would be their mistake. All crew, Okonkwo announced over the ship-wide comm. Final systems check in 6 hours. We go to combat stations in 12. Get some rest if you can. Tomorrow we remind the galaxy why our ancestors were feared before they were pitied. She closed the channel and whispered to herself, God, help us all. Behind her, Berserker's holographic display flickered with what might have been anticipation. The AI had been designed to win unwinnable fights. It was finally going to find out if its creators had succeeded. The Valorian vanguard consisted of 12 warships arranged in a standard battle formation. They were beautiful vessels by galactic standards, each one a masterpiece of efficient design. Their hulls gleamed with the Empire's traditional silver and gold colors. Their shields glowed with the steady pulse of confident power. They had fought in 100 battles and never lost one. Supreme Commander Thelgzar watched from his flagship, positioned safely behind the vanguard as the human fleet prepared its pitiful defense near Luna. 9 damaged ships against his armada of 200. The mathematics were simple. The outcome was certain. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer said, that unknown vessel is still on approach. It will reach the vanguard in 40 minutes. Thelgzar glanced at the display. The single human ship was accelerating hard, pushing toward his formation at speeds that seemed reckless. Probably an older captain, he thought. Someone who remembered humanity's violent past and wanted to die with glory, rather than surrender with dignity. Instruct the vanguard to destroy it when it enters range, Thelxar ordered. I want it done quickly. We have a schedule to maintain. Lokes. Yes, Supreme Commander. Aboard the Ragnarok. Captain Okonkwo sat in her command chair and watched the tactical display count down the distance to engagement range. Her crew was at their stations, ready as they would ever be. The ship hummed with power, all systems operating at levels that would make a standard fleet engineer have a heart attack. Berserker, she said calmly. Combat status? All weapons armed and eager, Captain, the AI replied. Its voice had changed slightly, taken on an edge that hadn't been there before. Targets acquired. Threat assessment complete. Tactical analysis complete. Probability of our destruction 92%. Probability of taking them with us 100%. Commander Adeyemi looked up from his tactical station. I don't like those odds. Neither do I, Okonkwo said. But they're better than Earth's odds, if we don't buy them time. Berserker, engage combat protocol. With pleasure, Captain. The bridge lighting shifted to red. Displays changed, showing information in formats the crew had barely learned during their crash training. The ship itself seemed to tense, like a predator preparing to pounce. Ensign Kim, Okonkwo said, take us in. Don't fly like you were taught. Fly like you're crazy. Kim's hands moved over the helm controls. The ship lurched forward with acceleration that should have crushed them all. But the inertial dampeners caught them at the last microsecond. The sensation was nauseating, like falling and being caught repeatedly. This is insane, Kim muttered, but he was smiling. For the first time in his career, someone was asking him to fly badly on purpose. The Valorian vanguard detected the Ragnarok's acceleration and immediately adjusted formation. Their tactical computers calculated intercept points, optimal firing solutions, and predicted the human ship's likely evasive maneuvers. Everything was proceeding exactly as programmed. That was their first mistake. Entering enemy weapons range in 60 seconds, Adeyemi announced. Ensign Torres, Okonkwo said. Target their flagship, not the power core. The bridge. Torres hesitated for just a second. Every instinct from her training said to target the power core for maximum damage, but she had learned to trust her instincts over training, which was why she had never advanced in the fleet. Now those instincts were exactly what was needed. Bridge targeted, Captain. Harpoon swarm ready. Fire when ready. The Ragnarok opened fire at maximum range, long before the Valorians expected an attack. The harpoons were small, barely visible on tactical displays. They looked insignificant compared to the massive energy weapons the Vanguard carried. The Valorian flagship's shields registered the incoming projectiles and adjusted frequency automatically. Standard defense protocol. The harpoons would splash harmlessly against the shields. Except they didn't. The first harpoon hit the shield and began vibrating. The frequency was wrong, not a threat. The second harpoon hit, different frequency, also wrong. The third, fourth, fifth, all wrong. But the 23rd harpoon hit exactly the right frequency. For 1 microsecond, a gap appeared in the shield. The 24th harpoon went through that gap and struck the flagship's bridge. The damage was minimal. One small projectile couldn't destroy a bridge designed to withstand capital ship weapons. But it penetrated, and that should have been impossible. On the flagship's bridge, alarms began screaming. Officers stared at damage reports that made no sense. Their shields hadn't failed. They had been tricked. Return fire, the Vanguard commander ordered. All ships, engage. 12 warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and plasma bolts crossed the space between them and the Ragnarok in a beautiful, deadly light show. The Valorian tactical computers had calculated the human ship's position, its likely evasive maneuvers, and had distributed fire to cover all possible escape vectors. The calculations were perfect. The execution was flawless. The problem was that Kim wasn't flying evasively. He was flying randomly. The ship dove down when every tactical probability said it should roll left. It accelerated when it should have decelerated. It spun on 3 axes simultaneously for no apparent reason, except that no computer would predict it. The Valorian fire missed. Not by much, but in space combat. Close, didn't count. Impossible. Thelzar whispered, watching from his flagship. No pilot can fly that unpredictably. The crew would be liquefied by the G-forces. His tactical officer was frantically checking sensors. Sir, their inertial dampeners are operating at 230% of maximum safe capacity. They should have failed by now. Then why haven't they? Unknown, sir. Either their engineering is far more advanced than we believed, or they're accepting risks no rational crew would take. The Ragnarok rolled through the Valorian formation like a shark through a school of fish. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't efficient. It was chaos made physical, and chaos was something the Valorian tactical computers had never been programmed to handle. Probability cannon charged, Adeyemi announced. Target? Center of their formation, Okonkwo said. Make them scatter. The probability cannon fired. It didn't look like much on the visual displays, just a ripple in space. But in the center of the Valorian formation, reality briefly disagreed with itself. A sphere of space, 50 meters in diameter, suddenly experienced gravity at 10,000 times normal. Everything in that sphere, including the space itself, tried to occupy the same point. A Valorian cruiser happened to have its bow in that sphere. The front 20 meters of the ship crumpled like paper, crushed by impossible gravitational forces. The effect lasted only 2 seconds. But when it ended, the cruiser was venting atmosphere and spinning out of formation. What was that? Thelzar demanded. Unknown weapon, Supreme Commander. It appears to generate localized gravitational distortions. I've never seen anything like it. Numb. Is it possible? Apparently, sir. The Vanguard formation broke. It was a small break. Just ships moving to avoid the area where their companion had been crippled. But it was enough. The perfect spacing was disrupted. The overlapping fields of fire now had gaps. Berserker, who had been monitoring the battle with the focus of a chess master playing against novices, immediately identified those gaps. Captain, I am detecting confusion in their communication protocols. Their officers are requesting new orders. Their computers are recalculating. I estimate we have 17 seconds of decision paralysis. I recommend aggressive exploitation. Do it, Okonkwo said. What happened next would be analyzed in military academies for the next century, usually with the note, this tactic should not work and should never be attempted. The Ragnarok accelerated directly toward the center of the Valorian formation, not toward a specific target, not along an attack vector that made tactical sense, but straight into the middle of the enemy fleet, where every ship could fire at it simultaneously. Suicide. Every tactical computer calculated. Every Valorian officer thought the same thing. The human crew had panicked. Except they hadn't. At the last possible second, Kim threw the ship into a spin, while simultaneously firing every thruster in different directions. The Ragnarok tumbled through space like a drunk gymnast, still moving forward but rotating unpredictably on all axes. And while it tumbled, Torres fired everything. Harpoons at the shields. Missiles with individual AI that didn't fly toward optimal targets, but toward psychological ones. The bridges, the crew decks, the external sensor arrays. EMP bursts that didn't disable systems permanently, but did it in patterns designed to create maximum confusion. One ship's weapons, another ship's communications, a third ship's navigation. The Valorian formation dissolved into chaos. Ships fired at the Ragnarok, but their weapons tracked too slowly for such erratic movement. 2 ships, trying to intercept the human vessel, nearly collided with each other and had to take emergency evasive action. A third ship, its sensors blinded by EMP, fired on a friendly vessel by mistake. Okonkwo watched the tactical display with the cold calculation of someone who had studied human military history. This was ancient tactics. Really. Get inside the enemy's decision cycle. Make them react instead of act. Create chaos faster than they can restore order. Sun Tzu would have approved if he had been watching from 25 centuries in the past. Target the damaged cruiser, she ordered. Finish it. Torres didn't hesitate. The crippled Valorian cruiser, still spinning from the probability cannon hit, took a full missile barrage. Its shields were down, its point defense systems offline. The missiles struck the reactor core. The cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. First blood to the humans. Vanguard commander is calling for reinforcements, Adeyemi reported, listening to intercepted communications. He's reporting the human vessel as a priority threat. How long until reinforcements arrive? Okonkwo asked. 12 minutes. Then we have 12 minutes to make them regret sending only the Vanguard. Berserker? Analysis? Enemy formation is disrupted but reforming. They are adapting to our tactics. I calculate we can destroy 3 more vessels before they establish effective countermeasures. After that, probability of our survival drops to 11%. Then let's make those 3 ships count. Kim, take us to target 2. Torres, I want full swarm protocol on my mark. Swarm protocol? Torres said, her voice uncertain. Captain, I haven't trained on that system. Neither has anyone in the last 30 years. The computer will handle targeting. You just release it and pray. The Ragnarok dove toward its next target, a destroyer that was frantically trying to re-establish its place in formation. The Valorian ship fired everything it had, but Kim's random flight pattern made targeting impossible. The ship tumbled, spun, and somehow ended up exactly where it needed to be. Swarm protocol, release, Okonkwo ordered. Torres pressed the release. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, space around the Valorian destroyer filled with thousands of tiny objects. They looked like debris at first, too small to be missiles, too numerous to be anything dangerous. They were drones. Thousands of miniature drones. Each one barely larger than a human hand. Each one with a tiny shaped charge and minimal guidance systems. Individually, they were harmless. Collectively, they were a nightmare. The drones swarmed the destroyer like insects, too numerous for point defense to track, too small for the shields to effectively stop. They landed on the hull and detonated. Each explosion was tiny, barely scratching the armor. But thousands of tiny explosions in rapid succession created structural stress. The armor cracked. The cracks spread. The destroyer's hull integrity failed in 17 places simultaneously. The ship didn't explode. It simply came apart, sections separating as structural supports failed. The crew had time to evacuate some sections, but not all. It was messy, inefficient, and absolutely horrifying to watch. Thelgzar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. What are they doing? These tactics are barbaric. They're fighting to win, Supreme Commander. His tactical officer said quietly. Not to win efficiently, just to win. I don't think they care about the difference. A third Valorian ship, a frigate, tried to flee the combat zone. It was the smart, tactical decision. Regroup, call for support, return with overwhelming force. But the Ragnarok had been designed to fight opponents who were smarter and stronger. It had also been designed to punish smart tactical decisions. Don't let it leave, Okonkwo ordered. The Ragnarok's probability cannon fired again. This time, the gravitational distortion appeared directly in the frigate's escape path. The ship couldn't stop in time. It flew directly into the zone where gravity briefly became a weapon. The frigate's forward section crumpled. The ship didn't die, but it couldn't run either. Its engines destroyed by its own momentum. Finish it, Okonkwo said, her voice cold. Torres did. The crippled frigate joined its companions in the growing debris field. 3 Valorian ships destroyed, 2 heavily damaged, 7 remaining in the vanguard, and now they were reforming with the specific purpose of destroying the Ragnarok at any cost. Reinforcements arriving in 4 minutes, Adeyemi announced. 30 ships. Okonkwo looked at the tactical display. They had done what they came to do. They had hurt the Empire. They had bought Earth time. But now they had a choice. Stay and die, or run and fight another day. Berserker, she said. Can we break through their formation and escape? Yes, Captain. Probability of success, 43%. Probability of significant damage, 91%. Probability of looking like cowards, 100%. Probability of success, R12. Despite everything, Okonkwo smiled. The AI had learned human psychology a little too well. We're not here to survive, she said. We're here to win. Take us in for another pass. Around the bridge, the crew exchanged glances. They were going back in. They were probably going to die. But for the first time in their careers, they were doing it in a way that felt right. The Ragnarok turned toward the reforming Valorian vanguard and accelerated into what should have been certain death. Behind them, the debris of 3 Imperial warships tumbled through space. The first Valorian losses in decades. The galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten. Humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win. And when they couldn't win, they fought anyway. Just to see what would happen. What happened next would make history. The remaining 7 ships of the Valorian vanguard had learned from their losses. They formed a defensive sphere, overlapping fields of fire. Maximum shield strength. Their tactical computers were now loaded with every maneuver the Ragnarok had performed, analyzing patterns, looking for predictability. They found none. Captain, Berserker said, its voice carrying what almost sounded like amusement. The enemy has adapted their formation to counter our previous tactics. This is expected. However, they are making an assumption. What assumption? Okonkwo asked. The bridge crew was tired. They had been in combat for 17 minutes, which didn't sound like much until you realized that every second of that time they had been pulling G-forces that should have killed them. They assume we have a limited playbook. That we will repeat tactics because they were successful. This is how civilized species fight. They optimize. They repeat. They perfect. And we don't? Captain, I have 17,000 combat scenarios loaded in my core. Most of them have never been tested. Many of them probably shouldn't be tested. Each one is designed for a specific tactical situation. I have been analyzing this battle for the last 17 minutes and 12 seconds. I have identified 43 tactics that would have a high probability of success against this specific formation. Commander Adeyemi looked up from his tactical station. 43? For one formation? Yes, Commander. The designers built me to never fight the same way twice. Predictability is death. Therefore, unpredictability is life. Shall I demonstrate? Okonkwo felt a chill. The AI sounded eager. Too eager. But they were committed now. Show us what you've got, Berserker. With pleasure. The Ragnarok accelerated, but this time it didn't charge directly at the enemy formation. Instead, it flew past them at maximum velocity, close enough that the Valorian ships could have fired, but too fast for effective targeting. As it passed, the ship released something from its ventral launch tubes. What was that? The Valorian Vanguard commander demanded. Unknown, sir. Sensor signature is minimal. They appear to be small objects. Perhaps debris. They weren't debris. They were mines, but not conventional ones. Each mine contained a small reactor, a sophisticated sensor package, and a shaped nuclear charge. They drifted into the space around the Valorian formation, looking harmless, reading as background radiation. The Ragnarok completed its pass and began a slow arc back toward the enemy. The Valorian ships tracked it, waiting for the attack. Their point defense systems primed to shoot down missiles or harpoons. "Berserker," Okonkwo said quietly. "What are those mines waiting for?" Specific energy signatures, Captain. I am monitoring the enemy ship's shield frequencies, engine output, and communication bursts. When I detect the optimal moment, the mines will activate. They are patient. I am patient. The enemy is not. The Vanguard commander was indeed not patient. "All ships, focus fire on the human vessel. Full salvo on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." 7 ships fired simultaneously. The space between them and the Ragnarok filled with enough energy to vaporize a small moon. Kim threw the ship into another series of impossible maneuvers, but this time the Valorians had calculated for unpredictability. The fire pattern was wider, covering more space. 3 plasma bolts struck the Ragnarok's shields. The ship shuddered. Alarm klaxons blared across the bridge. "Shields down to 60%, Chief Engineer Chernov reported from engineering. "Port armor taking stress damage. I'm redistributing power. But Captain, we can't take many more hits like that." "Noted," Okonkwo said calmly. "Berserker, those mines better do something soon." "Patience, Captain." "The enemy commander is doing exactly what I predicted. He is maintaining formation to maximize combined fire. His ships are maintaining close proximity for mutual shield support. Their energy signatures are synchronized for optimal tactical coordination. And that makes them a perfect target. Activating mines now." The mines came alive. Their sensors detected the synchronized energy patterns of the Valorian formation, identified the precise shield frequencies all 7 ships were using, and triangulated their positions. Then they detonated in a carefully choreographed sequence. The nuclear explosions weren't meant to destroy the ships. They were meant to create electromagnetic chaos. The 7 synchronized shield grids, so efficient when working together, suddenly found themselves receiving conflicting input from multiple sources. The tactical computers tried to compensate, adjusting frequencies, redistributing power. For 3 seconds, the Valorian formation's shields flickered and destabilized. 3 seconds was enough. "Torres, fire everything," Okonkwo ordered. The Ragnarok unleashed its full arsenal. Harpoons at the flickering shields. Missiles at every ship simultaneously. The probability cannon at the center of the formation. EMP bursts. To maximize the confusion. And something new, a weapon system labeled only as Shredder, that Torres activated without really understanding what it did. What it did was horrible. The Shredder fired thousands of small projectiles, each one moving at a significant fraction of light speed. They were just metal fragments, nothing sophisticated. But at those velocities, they didn't need to be sophisticated. They just needed to hit something. And with the shields destabilized, they hit everything. 2 Valorian destroyers were shredded, their hulls punctured in hundreds of places. One simply lost pressure and had to emergency evacuate all crew to the core sections. The other took a fragment through its reactor containment. The explosion was immediate and absolute. The remaining ships scattered. Formation discipline broke completely, as individual captains prioritized survival over coordination. It was the tactically wrong decision, but it was the human decision, which was probably why it happened. Fear overrode training. Berserker, monitoring the enemy communications, detected the fear in the voice patterns. "Captain, enemy morale is breaking. Their communication protocols are shifting from tactical coordination to survival requests. They are calling for immediate reinforcement and considering retreat." "How long until those reinforcements arrive?" Okonkwo asked. 90 seconds, 30 ships, fresh and coordinated." "Captain, I calculate that we have achieved our objective. We have disrupted the Vanguard and created chaos in the enemy command structure. I recommend tactical withdrawal. Okonkwo looked at the tactical display. They had destroyed or crippled 6 Valorian ships. 6. Out of an armada of 200. It wasn't enough. Earth needed more time. Negative. Berserker. We press the attack. Target their reinforcements as they arrive. Adeyemi turned in his chair. Captain, with respect, attacking 30 fresh ships with our shields at 60% is suicide. Probably, Okonkwo agreed. But we're not trying to survive. We're trying to buy Earth every minute we can. Berserker, can we hurt them before they kill us? The AI was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice had changed, quieter, more serious. Yes, Captain. I can hurt them badly, but the crew will not survive. The maneuvers required exceed safe operational parameters by a significant margin. Do it anyway. Around the bridge, the crew heard this exchange. No one objected. They had volunteered for this mission knowing it was likely one way. They had made peace with that. What they hadn't expected was to actually hurt the enemy. That made it worth it. Very well, Captain, Berserker said. If we are to die, let us make it memorable. Initiating combat protocol, Omega. This has never been tested. It will either be brilliant or catastrophic. Probably both, Okonkwo muttered. The 30 Valorian reinforcement ships arrived in perfect formation, ready to overwhelm the lone human vessel that had somehow destroyed 6 of their companions. Their tactical computers had analyzed the battle, identified the Ragnarok's tactics, and prepared countermeasures. What they weren't prepared for was the Ragnarok flying directly at them at maximum velocity while spinning on all 3 axes and firing every weapon randomly in all directions. It looked like the ship had lost control. The Valorian commanders thought the human vessel had taken critical damage and was tumbling helplessly. They moved to intercept, planning to capture it if possible for intelligence purposes. That was exactly what Berserker wanted them to think. At the last possible second, the Ragnarok's engines fired in a pattern that should have torn the ship apart. The inertial dampeners screamed, operating at 300% capacity. In engineering, Chernov watched displays that showed red across every system and laughed like a madman while he manually overrode safety protocols. The ship didn't fly through the Valorian formation. It danced through it, a ballet of chaos and violence that followed no pattern because there was no pattern to follow. Berserker was improvising in real time, creating tactics that had never existed before and would never exist again because they were specific to this exact moment. Torres fired weapons without being ordered to. She had stopped trying to understand the tactical situation and started trusting her instincts. A ship there, a missile here. Not because it made tactical sense, but because it felt right. She was fighting by intuition, and intuition was impossible to predict. Kim stopped thinking and let his hands move. The ship responded like it was reading his mind. Which, in a way, it was. Berserker was learning his patterns and breaking them before the Valorians could detect them. The result was beautiful. In a terrible way. The Valorian formation tried to adjust, tried to bring coordinated fire to bear on the human ship, but coordinated fire required prediction, and the Ragnarok was being piloted by an AI that was designed to be unpredictable, flown by a pilot who had stopped following rules, and armed by a gunner who was shooting from instinct. 3 more Valorian ships took critical damage in the first 30 seconds of the engagement. 2 more collided while trying to avoid the Ragnarok's random flight path. One actually fired on a friendly vessel because its targeting computer couldn't keep track of which ship was which in the chaos. Supreme Commander Thelzar watched from his flagship, his face pale. What is that ship? What are they doing? I don't know, Supreme Commander. His tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. Our computers can't model their behavior. They're not following any known tactical doctrine. They're not even following their own previous patterns. It's like they're making it up as they go. That's impossible. No crew can coordinate like that without doctrine. Then they're doing the impossible, sir. Thelzar made a decision. It was the hardest decision of his career, but it was necessary. All ships, pull back to defensive range. Do not engage the human vessel individually. We will reform and engage it with the full armada. I will not lose more ships to whatever madness they're employing. And the order went out. The Valorian ships began withdrawing. Some had to be dragged away by tractor beams, too damaged to retreat on their own. Others fled at maximum speed, their crews traumatized by fighting an enemy that didn't make sense. Aboard the Ragnarok, alarms were blaring continuously. The ship was dying. Shields were down to 18%. Hull breaches on multiple decks. The reactor was running hot. The inertial dampeners were failing. "Captain," Chernoff reported, his voice rough from breathing smoke. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before critical systems cascade. After that, we're dead in space." Okonkwo nodded. 5 minutes. They had bought Earth 5 minutes plus the time it would take the Valorian Armada to reform and approach. Maybe an hour total. 1 hour for humanity to prepare. 1 hour purchased with the Ragnarok and its crew of misfits. "Berserker," she said. "Can we make it back to Earth?" "No, Captain. But we can make it to the debris field we created. We can hide there, make emergency repairs, and perhaps survive long enough to be recovered. Do it. All hands, brace for emergency acceleration. Kim, get us to cover." The Ragnarok limped toward the expanding debris field that marked the grave of 9 Valorian warships. 9 ships destroyed or crippled by 1 human vessel. The mathematics didn't make sense. The tactics didn't make sense. But the results were undeniable. Thelzar stood on his bridge and watched the human ship disappear into the debris field. Around him, his officers were silent. The Supreme Commander had conquered 43 species. He had fought in 1,000 battles. He had never lost. Until today. "Send a message to the fleet," he said quietly. "We will proceed with the invasion as planned. But that ship, that 1 human vessel, is now priority target 1. I want it found and destroyed before we approach Earth. I will not have it interfering with our assault." "Yes, Supreme Commander." Thelzar continued to stare at the debris field. 9 ships. The humans had cost him 9 ships. Out of 200. That was nothing. Strategically, it meant nothing. But psychologically, it meant everything. His fleet had just learned that humans could fight back, that they could hurt the Empire, that they wouldn't surrender quietly. For the first time in his career, Thelzar felt something he hadn't felt in decades. He felt doubt. The Ragnarok drifted in the debris field, powered down to minimal systems. Around the ship floated the wreckage of 9 Valorian warships, a graveyard of metal and frozen atmosphere. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue jewel, unaware that its fate was being decided in the darkness between worlds. Captain Okonkwo sat in her command chair, listening to damage reports from every section of the ship. The list was long and growing longer. Hull breaches on 7 decks, primary weapons offline, shields at 6%. The reactor was stable, but only because Chief Chernoff had personally climbed into the reactor room and manually adjusted the containment field while being exposed to radiation levels that would probably kill him in a few years. "How long do we have?" she asked Berserker. "If we maintain minimal power, I estimate we can remain undetected for 47 minutes. After that, the Valorian fleet will complete their tactical reorganization and begin advancing. They will scan this debris field thoroughly. They will find us. Can we repair anything in 47 minutes? No, Captain. But we can prepare for one final engagement. I have been analyzing the battle data. I have learned things." Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. "An AI that learns from experience. The designers really did build you well. Thank you, Captain. What I have learned is disturbing. The Valorian fleet is reforming around Supreme Commander Thelzar's flagship. They are no longer treating this as a routine conquest. They are treating it as a threat requiring overwhelming force. The entire Armada will advance together. No vanguard, no distributed formation. Just 200 ships moving as one. Commander Adeyemi, who was bandaging a cut on his forehead from when a console had exploded, looked up. They're scared. Yes, Commander. We have introduced uncertainty into their tactical calculations. This is psychologically destabilizing for a species that has won every battle for 300 years. Can we use that? Okonkwo asked. Perhaps. But Captain, I must be honest with you. In our current condition, we cannot survive another engagement with the full Armada. We barely survived the last one. The crew is exhausted. The ship is crippled. If we fight again... Noted. What are our other options? We can surrender. We can attempt to retreat to Earth. Or we can make our deaths meaningful. End well. We can surrender. End well. We can surrender. 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 Okonkwo closed her eyes. She was 72 years old. She had lived a good life. She had seen humanity reach for the stars and find their place among civilized species. She had also seen humanity forget what had made them strong in the first place. The Ragnarok was built to remember that. To remind the galaxy that humans weren't civilized because they were naturally peaceful. They were civilized because they chose to be, and that choice could be unmade when necessary. She opened her eyes. Berserker, patch me through to Admiral Chen. The communication channel opened after a few seconds. Chen's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had just hours ago. The weight of command during Earth's darkest hour was visible in every line of his face. Captain Okonkwo, he said. We saw the battle. You bought us time. The defense grid is operational. The remaining fleet is in position. It won't be enough, but we'll make them pay for Earth. Admiral, I need you to listen carefully. The Valorian Armada is reforming. They're going to advance as a unified force. 200 ships. Your 9 ships and the defense grid won't stop them. You know this. Chen nodded slowly. I know. But we fight. Anyway, I have a better idea. The Ragnarok is crippled, but it can still fly. It can still fight. I want you to evacuate the other 9 ships. Get the crews to safety. Then I want you to give me control of those ships remotely. You want to control 9 ships with your crew? No, Admiral. I want Berserker to control them. This AI was designed for asymmetric warfare. It can coordinate multiple vessels in ways no human crew could match. 9 ships plus the Ragnarok, all operating under one tactical intelligence. All fighting with the same unpredictable doctrine. Chen was quiet for a long moment. You understand what you're asking? You're asking me to abandon the fleet, to trust Earth's defense to an AI and a crippled prototype. I'm asking you to trust that the people who built the Ragnarok knew what they were doing. This ship was designed for this exact scenario. Let it do what it was meant to do. Another pause. Then Chen nodded. I'll give the evacuation order. The ships will be under your command in 30 minutes. God be with you, Captain. If God is watching this, Admiral, I hope he appreciates good tactics. Okonkwo. Out. The channel closed. Okonkwo looked around her bridge at the exhausted crew. They had heard the conversation. They knew what was coming. Captain. Ensign Torres said quietly. We're all going to die. Aren't we? Probably, Okonkwo said honestly. But we're going to take as many of them with us as we can. And we're going to give Earth a chance to survive. That's more than most people can say about their deaths. Torres nodded. She was young, 24 years old, barely old enough to have served in the fleet for 3 years. She had washed out of academy for being too aggressive, too willing to target crew sections instead of optimal damage points. Now, that aggression was exactly what was needed. I'm ready, Captain, she said. Around the bridge, the others echoed her. Kim, The pilot who had never fit into standard doctrine. Chernov. The engineer who broke every safety regulation. Adeyemi. The tactical officer whose papers on asymmetric warfare had been rejected for being too radical. They were ready. Berserker, Okonkwo said. When we receive control of the other ships, can you coordinate all 10 vessels simultaneously? Yes, Captain. I am designed for exactly this kind of operation. I will treat the 10 ships as a single distributed organism. Each vessel will be a limb acting in coordination with the others, but independently enough to remain unpredictable. Show me what you can do. Over the next 30 minutes, the crew of the Ragnarok watched as 9 Terran Defense Fleet ships evacuated their crews and transmitted control codes to Berserker. The AI integrated them into its tactical network, running simulations, testing response times, learning the capabilities and limitations of each vessel. In the distance, the Valorian Armada began its advance. 200 ships, moving in perfect formation. Their shields overlapping, their weapons charged. They were coming slowly, cautiously, scanning everything in their path. They had learned respect for human unpredictability. Captain, Berserker said. I have a proposal. It is tactically unsound by every conventional metric. It will almost certainly result in our destruction. But it might, just possibly, create enough chaos to break the enemy fleet's cohesion. I'm listening. The Valorians are advancing as a unified formation to prevent us from dividing and conquering. They expect us to try to separate their ships and engage them individually. Standard asymmetric doctrine. Ringzer. The Valorians too. So we don't do that? Correct. We do the opposite. We engage their strongest point with everything we have. We attack Supreme Commander Thelgzar's flagship directly. With all 10 ships. In a coordinated suicide run. The bridge was silent. Even by the standards of the Ragnarok's crazy tactics, this was insane. Explain, Okonkwo said. The Valorian fleet is psychologically dependent on their command structure. Thelzar is not just their commander. He is a symbol of imperial invincibility. If we can kill him, if we can destroy his flagship in front of the entire Armada, the psychological impact will be catastrophic. Some ships will flee. Others will seek revenge without coordination. The formation will collapse. At the cost of all 10 of our ships. Yes, Captain. But Earth will survive. The remaining Valorian forces will be disorganized. Your defense grid and orbital platforms will be able to inflict significant casualties. The invasion will fail. Okonkwo thought about her life. About the choices that had led her here. About the prototype ship she had recommended terminating because it scared her. About how that fear had been justified, but not in the way she had expected. Do it, she said. All crew, prepare for final engagement. If any of you want to evacuate to escape pods, now is the time. I won't judge you. No one moved. They had come this far together. They would finish it, together. Fools, Okonkwo said, but she was smiling. Brave, stubborn fools. I'm proud to serve with you. The Ragnarok and its 9 companion ships emerged from the debris field. The Valorian fleet detected them immediately. Alarms went off across 200 warships. The humans were attacking again. All ships, defensive formation around the flagship. Thelgzar ordered. Prepare to engage. Overwhelming fire. I want those ships destroyed before they get within weapons range. But the human ships weren't trying to stay out of weapons range. They were accelerating directly toward the flagship, pushing their engines to maximum, their shields to full power. Everything focused on one suicidal charge. They're insane, Thelgzar's tactical officer said. No, Thelgzar replied quietly. They're desperate. And desperate enemies are the most dangerous kind. The Valorian fleet opened fire. The space between them and the human ships filled with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Energy beams and plasma bolts created a wall of death that nothing could survive. The human ships flew through it anyway. The first ship, a damaged cruiser under Berserker's control, exploded when it took a direct hit to its reactor. The AI had anticipated this. It had positioned that ship to absorb fire meant for the others. The sacrifice bought seconds. The second ship made it closer before a lucky shot pierced its bridge. It spun out of control, its systems failing. But before it died, Berserker fired all its remaining missiles at the flagship. They were shot down by point defense, but they drew attention away from the other ships. The third and fourth ships attacked from different angles, forcing the Valorian fleet to split its fire. Both ships were destroyed, but they took 3 enemy vessels with them, Valorian ships that had broken formation to intercept. "Captain," Berserker said, its voice calm, despite the chaos. "We will reach the flagship. I am certain of this. But I calculate that only the Ragnarok will survive long enough to strike the final blow. I need you to evacuate the crew." "Negative," Okonkwo said. "We finish this together, Captain. The crew can evacuate and still have a chance of survival. I can pilot the ship alone for the final attack. There is no logical reason for you to die. Logic doesn't enter into it, Berserker. We started this mission together. We end it together. That's what humans do. We're sentimental and stupid that way." "I see. Then, I am honored to die with you, Captain." The Ragnarok and 4 remaining ships broke through the defensive fire. 3 more ships died in the final approach, their hulls shredded by overwhelming fire. But they got close enough to use their weapons, close enough to hurt. The flagship's shields took hit after hit. The Valorian crew worked frantically to reinforce them, but the human ships were firing everything, including weapons that should have been depleted. Berserker had been saving resources, calculating the exact moment when everything would be needed. That moment was now. The Ragnarok, its hull blackened and burning, its shields completely gone, accelerated to ramming speed. Behind it, the last companion ship exploded, buying precious seconds with its sacrifice. "All power to forward momentum," Okonkwo ordered. "Chernov, give me everything the engines have." "Already done, Captain," Chernov replied from engineering. "Reactors running at 400%. We've got maybe 30 seconds before it explodes. That's all we need." On the flagship's bridge, Thelxar saw the damaged human vessel accelerating toward him. He saw the determination in its trajectory. He understood, too late, what they were trying to do. "Evasive maneuvers," he screamed. "Get us out of here." But dreadnoughts don't turn quickly. The flagship began to move, its massive engines straining, but it was too slow. The Ragnarok adjusted course, matching the evasion attempt, and continued its relentless approach. "Berserker," Okonkwo said quietly. "It's been an honor." "The honor was mine, Captain. Thank you for waking me. Thank you for letting me be what I was designed to be. One last thing. Send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell him 12 ships. Tell him we need 12 Ragnarok-class vessels. This design works. Use it." "Message sent, Captain. Impact in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The Ragnarok struck the Valorian flagship at relativistic speed. The kinetic energy was beyond calculation. The flagship's armor, designed to withstand capital ship weapons, crumpled like paper. The Ragnarok's reactor, already unstable, went critical on impact. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star in the darkness. When the light faded, the flagship was gone. Supreme Commander Thelxar was gone, and the Ragnarok was gone. Its crew scattered as atoms across the void. The Valorian fleet, witnessing the death of their supreme commander, their invincible leader, broke. Some ships fled immediately. Others, seeking revenge, charged forward without coordination and were destroyed by Earth's defense grid. Still, others simply stopped, their crews in shock. The invasion was over. On Earth, Admiral Chen received Berserker's final message. He stood at the command center window, watching the distant explosions, and wept for the crew of the Ragnarok. for humanity's Pyrrhic victory, for what they had lost and what they had gained. The message was simple: 12 ships. The design works. They will fear us now. Chen authorized it immediately. Construction began within hours. The Terran Congress, who had voted to bury the Ragnarok program 32 years ago, now voted unanimously to expand it. 12 ships, then 20, then 50. The galaxy had tried to teach humanity to be civilized. They had succeeded, for a while. But what the galaxy had forgotten was that civilization was a choice, not a nature. And when that choice was taken away, what remained underneath was something older and more terrible. Humanity was back. The age of being ignored had ended. The age of being feared had begun. Years later, at the memorial for the Ragnarok and its crew, someone would ask if it was worth it. If 53 lives were a fair price for Earth's survival. The answer depended on who you asked. The Valorian survivors would say that humanity had unleashed something terrible on the galaxy, that they had shown themselves to be barbaric and dangerous. Humanity would say they had simply reminded everyone of a fundamental truth: never back humans into a corner. Never give them a choice between submission and defiance, because they will choose defiance every time, no matter the cost. The memorial plaque listed all 53 names, starting with Captain Sarah Okonkwo and ending with the AI-designated Berserker. At the bottom, someone had inscribed the ship's unofficial motto, something the crew had apparently adopted during their brief time together. We fight not because we hate what is in front of us, but because we love what is behind us. Earth endured, humanity thrived, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the scattered atoms of the Ragnarok drifted on, a permanent reminder that some species would rather burn the galaxy down than kneel. The Empire learned that lesson well. They never returned to Earth. Neither did anyone else who valued their ships and their lives. Humanity had earned its place not through civilized behavior, but through the credible threat of uncivilized violence. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't diplomatic. It wasn't what the galaxy wanted, but it worked. And in the end, that was all that mattered.